of East Coast Bias as the boys are ready to rock to preview an outstanding slate for Week 15 in the NFL. We'll get it started with some NBA Cup as we welcome in the triple threat. John Jastremski, Raheem Palmer, Joe House. And Raheem, I'm starting with you because you and I were at Madison Square Garden on Wednesday evening. First trip to the world's most famous arena. I'm feeling the Knicks vibes. I'm thinking the Knicks are going to find their way to Las Vegas. They have a 7-point halftime lead. Then they got totally bullied by the Hawks. They couldn't hit an open three. They couldn't grab a rebound. I got to see that jabroni Trae Young rolling the dice in the midcourt logo. Once again, sticking it to my Knicks. And we got the Hawks and the Bucks and the Rockets and the Warriors. So, Raheem, your takeaway.
My biggest takeaway is that the Atlanta Hawks look like the last year's Knicks. And they just had a certain toughness to them tonight. You look at Dyson Daniels. He had Jalen Brunson in jail. And you look at the team as a whole. They have these big, long wings. Dyson Daniel, Jalen Johnson. You look at a guy like DeAndre Hunter. That's a lot of length out there. And they dominated defensively in the second half, but they also dominated on the glass. And this is the first time I've seen a Thibs team look completely soft. And, offensively, the Knicks struggled, but they didn't get every loose ball like they normally do. They didn't get every rebound.
House, I have to now tee you in because you were not at Madison Square Garden. And I was getting incredibly frustrated watching the Knicks miss open shots. And yeah, that sort of physicality that Atlanta provided, it was on full display in this game. Would you say it's more of a telltale sign for what you have to come with the Knicks, or is it more a sign of things to come for Atlanta?
I would say both. And the reason is because we saw on primetime display the single biggest vulnerability of this Knicks team in its current iteration and construction. There was a big question mark, even with the acquisition of Karl-Anthony Towns. How is this team going to protect the rim? How is this team going to rebound with Mitchell Robinson on the shelf for the extended periods that Mitchell Robinson is always on the shelf because the dude can't be healthy? Now, look, we're not worried about his health in November or December or even January. He needs to be healthy in March and April and May. And in that time frame, you would expect this New York organization, as aggressive as they were in the summer, to do something because Isaiah Hartenstein is not coming through that door, JJ. He's down in Oklahoma City wreaking havoc with those young fellas. And you guys used all of the right language. It's exactly right. The Hawks own the offensive boards. It was bully ball by the Hawks. I mean, it's exactly right. All of the length that the Hawks possess on the wings, Okongwu, Capella, they beat the Knicks on the offensive boards. They took 11 more shots because they got 10 more offensive rebounds. The team shot about the same. It wasn't exactly a shooting beauty contest, but, the concern for the Knicks is they need a big body. This is, I think, what the Hawks imagined this team could be as they built this thing in the offseason. And I have to be honest, I'm kind of into it.
House, how did Golden State lose that game? We literally were just diving into, hey, what do we think the Oklahoma City Golden State line is going to be? Then all of a sudden there's a loose ball foul with 10 seconds to go. Boom, 2 free throws. And I'm staring at the screen saying, yeah, Golden State covered, which I'm happy about. We all had that. But they didn't win. How did that happen?
This Golden State team is who we thought they were. At least I'll put my right hand up. I mean, I forecasted them to be kind of in the mid 40s at best. And yes, Wiggins was out. And yes, they lost Melton for the season. But really, they're going to struggle to score this season. A team with Steph Curry is going to struggle to score. And, he took a three that could have been the game clincher inside of a minute left. But, the Hawks went on a 7-0 run at the end. Now, that call, the loose ball foul call, was an abomination.
Atrocious.
Yeah.
Atrocious.
There's no way in the Davis Stern era that they're making that call against a Jordan, a Kobe, a Shaq. Like, he is absolutely rolling in his grave. And I don't know what's going on with the NBA now, but it feels like they've totally embraced the parity era.
Speaking of the parity era, so the NBA Final Four for the Cup in Vegas, Saturday, Tuesday. Raheem, you're going to be there. It is now set. It'll be Milwaukee and Atlanta. Atlanta is getting 3. Then it will be the Rockets, not Steph Curry, not the Warriors, the Rockets, and Ime Udoka and Dylan Brooks and the whole cast of characters.
Shingun.
Van Fleet, the whole deal. Rockets +5. Raheem, I'm starting with Atlanta, Milwaukee. We watched Atlanta tonight. They're tough. They're physical. I'm on Atlanta +3. I am playing Atlanta +3. Now, maybe that's, Nick PTSD coming out within me. I think they have a formula that could give the Bucks some trouble here in this game. Am I crazy?
I don't think you're crazy at all. And I think, the interesting thing about these particular matchups that you're seeing in the NBA Cup is that they're both revenge games. And you could argue that these are probably rivalries at this point in time. If you go back to December 4th, the Atlanta Hawks went on the road and beat the Milwaukee Bucks 119-104. I mean, they absolutely dominated that team in the second half. Very reminiscent of what we saw tonight. So I don't think you're crazy at all. And if you look at this Milwaukee Bucks team, they struggle to defend. This is not a team who was a great defensive team. They're 14th in defensive rating, allowing 113 points per 100 possessions. And look at who they played the other night. They played the Orlando Magic without Franz Wagner, without Paolo Banchero, and they still found themselves in a bit of a dogfight. So if you're in a dogfight with a team that doesn't have their 2 top scorers, and I mentioned it on Monday's podcast, this team was only scoring a point per possession with those 2 guys off the floor, and the Magic went out there and put up 110 per 100 possessions. And it literally took a miracle for the Bucks to win that game. They were down with less than 2 minutes to go.
Yeah, this is a dog fight, and I'll take the team with the dogs. Let me have Atlanta on the money line, +132 on the FanDuel Sportsbook right now. I'll grab the points as well. I'll just play it both ways because I think Atlanta has a structural advantage over Milwaukee. Milwaukee has a super duper star, and the NBA sure would like to get that super duper star to the final game in Vegas on Tuesday night. But I think the Hawks are just too much.
As far as the other game, House, there's no way in the world that can go against Oklahoma City. I can't do it, especially after what I saw the other night.
No.
Be very careful. Go look at the last 4 games Houston has played Oklahoma City. Houston has low-key dominated this team.
So you think it's a matchup thing more than anything else, Raheem? You think Houston just matches up well with the Thunder?
Yeah, man. Like, I don't know what it is, but Houston just beat them on December 1st. And you look at this team, Oklahoma City, obviously they have the better scores, but that Houston defense is serious. And for whatever reason, Houston during this current era, they've caused problems for Oklahoma City. They really have. So that is a game that I think you got to really be careful with. And I think, one of the trends that we're noticing is that these totals are flying under. They're flying under the total. You look at that Golden State Warriors Houston Rockets game, total 221. The game finished 90-91. You look at the New York Knicks versus the Atlanta Hawks, 238, 108-100. You look at Oklahoma City versus Dallas, 230 on a total, 104-118. The only game that went over the total was Magic versus Bucks, and I think you got a lot of free throws at the end. So I can see, I can see this easily being a defensive-minded game with Rockets and Thunder, but I know the public is going to be all over the Thunder, but obviously they have a top 10 player. And I think, you kind of saw it tonight. I know the Warriors choked that game away, but ultimately, for large parts of that fourth quarter, the Rockets couldn't score. So I can understand why you guys want to take Oklahoma City, But I at the same time, I do think this is kind of like a sharp line just because I know the Rockets have played this team so tough.
How's quickly? Who you like in that game?
Oklahoma City, and maybe the way to do it is a money line parlay of the Hawks with the Oklahoma City for the final.
Listen, OKC, tough team to go against. I understand the point, Raheem, but I think they might have a little extra sense of motivation. The matchup, Vegas, SGA, the stage, the cup odds tell you OKC favorite to go and bring this thing home, and I think there's a reason why for that. All right, we got a lot more to get to. All the NFL stuff. We got a good game all of a sudden on Thursday night. Bills, Lions, Steelers, Eagles. Got you covered. East Coast Bias Boys. We're coming right back. All right, welcome back. It's now time to dive into Week 15 in the NFL. What a glorious slate of games we have. It really starts Thursday night with the Rams and the Niners. We have you covered with the Bills and the Lions, the Eagles and the Steelers, Dolphins, Texans, Packers, Seahawks. Great slate of games. Let's start with this Thursday night game. The resurgent Rams, after their big win, Raheem, Sunday against the Bills. Stafford was great. Nakua was great, the whole deal. Niners, all of a sudden a new lease on life. Kick the Chicago Bears rear end. We know what the trends are. The Niners have had a lot of success historically against the Rams. That said, the Rams earlier this year took down the San Francisco 49ers in come from behind fashion. With all the injuries to the Niners, Raheem, I'm going to start the proceedings on this. I think this one's a little stinky with the Niners laying the 3. Rams have been a very up and down team all year. I'm selling high on them. You know, I had them last week. I'm going to take the San Francisco 49ers. Everyone left them dead to rights, including myself. I said they stay alive for another week, Dream. I'm taking them. I'm laying the 3.
So this one's tough for me because my model actually makes this game San Francisco minus 2.5. And if you look at the number for this game, it's very interesting to me because last week against the Chicago Bears, they were laying 4, closed around 3.5. And now you're at about 2.5. So, and I think the difference between the Rams and the Bears is pretty significant. And, you know, there's some matchup things in this game. So one of the issues that the Rams have always had with the 49ers is that they have problems defending the middle of the field. So guys like Jawan Jennings and George Kittle and Deebo Samuels, they should be able to get off in this game. And if Trent Williams isn't playing, that means George Kittle doesn't have to sit back there and block. And that opens up opportunities for him. And I think if Trent Williams plays, I want to be all over George Kittle props because we know those Rams linebackers aren't very good. So that's a matchup that I'm looking forward to. But from a numbers perspective, it's hard for me to get on San Francisco here. I mean, last week, the Bears took money against San Francisco, and obviously they beat up on a bad Bears team. But it's tough for me to go back to the window on San Francisco after we left them for dead last week. So I'm interested in hearing you guys' thoughts because I can't back San Francisco here.
Yeah, JJ, I have a couple big picture thoughts. I mean, in general, in this matchup, Shanahan has gotten the better of McVay in the regular season. And the fact that McVay stole one early in the season, stole that week 3 game out from under him, has me in the direction of San Francisco just because that's how this matchup has tended to go between these two teams. The other thing is, like 15 out of the last 16 times, this matchup has gone over 50 points. They had 51 in week 3. So the thing that I want to do for sure is jump on any number that's higher than it's 49.5 at the FanDuel Sportsbook as we are recording this. That's an over for me. And especially in view of the overall performance of both secondaries. Both of the 49ers and the Rams are in the bottom 6 in the NFL in terms of efficiency against the pass, and both, especially the Rams against that Bills team, there was just no stops. There was no stops to be had whatsoever. And they also don't have much in the way of a pass rush. I would expect San Francisco, with what Dream described, which is taking advantage of the middle of the field, also trying to establish the run, except for we don't have any idea who the running back is going to be. I mean, I know I can look at the depth chart and that's it, but it will be another name that is as foreign to everyone as Mr. Garando, the fantasy football pickup of the week last week. I'm kind of okay with going ahead and laying field goal or less with the Niners, but my true inclination is the over at anything 50 or under.
And this is a juiced up total, Raheem. This total opened up at around 47. To House's point, it's now in that 49 to 49 and a half range. It's a hefty total for Thursday night. Normally, House, I see a total that's in the high 40s, low 50s, and you're talking about guys on a short week. And I always kind of have a little skittishness when it comes to that, especially if you get off to a slow start. But I understand your logic. Hey, you're moving with the market. Hey, that Ram defense looked awful. And San Francisco's defense without Bosa more than likely can be had here. Raheem, you think this is a higher scoring game?
Yeah, my model actually puts this at 51, and we know 49 is key, so I think there's a little bit of value on that over, but I'm going to make my official play George Kittle over 58 and a half yards. I can't deny how much the Rams struggle to defend the middle of the field, and I just have to take it. And I think if the 49ers are going to make any noise, it's going to be because of George Kittle. So that's where I'm going with this. But I do agree with House. I think, the over is the right play, and my model likes it at 51.
I like where you're going with Kittle, because if you go back to when the Rams played on Monday Night Football against Miami, as I'm wearing the Dolphin hat right here, it was a monstrous day for one Jonnu Smith. So, yeah, that middle of the field, the tight end getting involved, I think that's something that Shanahan and company will look to do. But one thing with the Rams, House, they're one of those teams. We talk about zig and zag teams all the time. They in 2024 have been exactly that. It's like when you want to officially buy in on the Rams, they let you down. And when you're completely out on them, that's when they'll go and get it done. Weird team to figure out. That's why I'm kind of buying regression after the big Buffalo win.
Yeah, I think that your inclination here is right, because I think our mind's eye wanted to see the version of the Rams that we saw last season, where that offense all came together kind of all at once, and then they went on a run. What we've seen instead is they have won 6 of the last 8 games. Like, you go through, it's like, hey, they're on a pretty good run. But the problem is inconsistency, and especially some playing down to competition. And what we got most recently this Sunday was a track meet, and it was a perfect situation, perfect conditions for the Rams to just, fire on all cylinders. And it was a beautiful thing to see. That game was magnificent. But the thing that has me, and we're talking through some of the prop size here, I think Purdy, what he showed on Sunday, his shoulder is okay. He was throwing the ball all over the field with the kind of accuracy that we've grown to be accustomed to with him. And reminder, he threw for 292 yards, and his yards per attempt in week 3 against these Rams, 9.73. So I think, in view of what we just observed from Purdy in terms of that health question, and the fact that for sure San Francisco is comfortable against this Rams defense, I like all of the sort of, receiver and quarterback props on the San Francisco side of things.
So the boys align with points in this game. I'm going to take San Francisco and go against my dog from last week, buying some regression on the Rams, and I'll keep riding those Shanahan-McVay trends despite what happened earlier in the year. All right. It's as good a Sunday of NFL action as we have had all year. When we come back, there are 2 monstrous games. They're heads up with one another. So I hope you have your 4-box ready. I can't believe one of these games is not on Monday night. It is what it is. Bills-Lions, Super Bowl preview. Steelers-Eagles, Super Bowl preview. We'll break it down. East Coast Bias Boys. A lot of football to get to. We're coming right back. All right, boys. I'm fired up for these games. It's a monstrous slate, House. I got to start with the game that, to me, is probably a Super Bowl preview. Not a given. A lot can happen between now and the month of February down in New Orleans. But Buffalo and Detroit are certainly 2 teams that can win the whole thing. Detroit had their emotional win. Defense beat up. Campbell, aggressive. They find a way to beat Green Bay last week. Buffalo, Josh Allen couldn't have done any more, but they lost the game. Now, as far as who this game means more to, it's not even close if you're going to handicap it that way. This game means significantly more for Detroit than it does Buffalo. I know you can paint the picture, Buffalo, 1 seed, all that. That's going to be asking a lot for them over the final 4 weeks. Detroit having home field advantage, I think, is a must for them if they're going to go and get to the Super Bowl. Here's the line. Detroit is up to a 2.5-point favorite in this game. Concerns with Buffalo's defense. Concerns with Detroit's defense. Allen's played well against them. House, I'll start with you. Buff, Detroit, who you got?
I feel like this one is razor thin, and I have it in the same class, the same category as the Thursday night matchup against Green Bay, which was also an excellent football game with two of the greatest, strategic and sort of conception-wise, the schemes that both Matt LaFleur and Dan Campbell and their staffs show up with. Now, I don't think we have the same kind of matchup here because Sean McDermott is relentless. He makes the wrong decision when it's game-winning time. There's enough evidence out there. We watched it once again this most recent Sunday. So there's a couple areas where I feel like Detroit has an advantage. I do think they're going to be able to establish the run. I do think that, Buffalo up front, their defensive front seven can get pushed around a little bit by this Detroit offensive line. And I think special teams wise, we watched really the difference in that game against the Rams was the special teams mess up. What we've seen out of Detroit is a level of discipline and execution, especially when it's game-winning time. Dan Campbell is making the right call and also getting the results out of the right call. So another razor-thin kind of situation, but my inclination is to go ahead and lay it with Detroit.
Yeah, I think House is on the money with this. And look, you look at the Detroit Lions and just how they performed this year. I have them the number one ranked power ranked team in the NFL this year. And I actually make this line closer to 4 than 2.5. So I'm seeing a small edge on the Detroit Lions. And, last week was very concerning for the Bills. Look, we talk about Super Bowl contenders. Does anybody have a good defense? Because last week, the Rams just marched up and down the field doing whatever they wanted. And you look at the Rams, one of their biggest struggles all year was that they could not convert third downs. They were converting 25% of their third downs. Well, last week, they converted 11 out of 15 third downs. They had 457 total yards, 320 in the air, and 137 on the ground. And we know that this Lions team, even though the defense isn't very good, they have one of the best offensive lines in the league. They push you around, and they can play ball control. They can take the ball out of Josh Allen's hands, and they also can throw the ball. So I think this is actually going to be a higher scoring game. I mean, when I look at my model, I actually have this around 57. So yeah, it's crazy because you're seeing 54.5 in the market right now, and I think this line was 53 earlier this week. So it just feels like you can't make this total high enough. So 54 is key, 51 is also key, but I think they're going to fly over this total. So that's how I'll be playing this. I don't really want to play a side, even though I do show a small edge on the Detroit Lions. It's tough to go against Josh Allen the way he's playing on the MVP level. So I think you just, you buy the offenses in this game.
I think there will be a ton of points. I'm right there with you, Raheem. I hate the idea of backing a narrative in which Josh Allen loses consecutive games, which doesn't happen particularly often. It did happen earlier this year, though, might I add, with Baltimore and then again against the Houston Texans. I think it's happening this week. I think for a couple of different reasons. The sense of desperation for Detroit, the extra rest for Detroit, knowing now the defections they have on defense, another week to get a little bit more comfortable with that. And they have just been a powerhouse in that building. I'm going to lay the 2.5. I'm with you. I think there will be a ton of points in the game. I'm taking the Lions, who need it that much more than the Bills. They find a way to get it done. Now, Pittsburgh and Philly. The books, clearly, Raheem, are not believers in the Pittsburgh Steelers. And the reason I say that is look at this point spread, which seems out of whack. It seems too high. You have the narrative in Philadelphia surrounding Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown and now Sirianni getting involved. And yet our friends at FanDuel and all the odds makers out there, they have no problem jacking that Eagles-Steelers line almost to the 6 range. We're seeing 5.5. And I expect the public is going to be all over a Mike Tomlin team as an underdog. Now, we know House loves the Steelers. We know he bets them as a dog every week. I will start with you, Mr. Market Man. Is this line where it should be, or are the books just not reading the Steelers properly?
I actually have it at 5 exactly. So it seems like the market has this very correct. And you look at the Steelers, one interesting thing about this team is that without George Pickens, that offense is not the same. And that's the scary thing about this game if you're backing the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, when it comes to the Philadelphia Eagles, they have one of the best defenses in the league, but this pass offense is absolutely abysmal. And it's very tough to back this team winning by margin when they don't have a decent pass offense. And it's also tough to back this team winning by margin when you consider in the first quarters, in the first halves of games, they truly struggled to put up points. So if you're backing the Eagles here, I think you need to just kind of just wait for an in-game situation based on what we've seen all season long, because they're starting off these games very slow. But, I mean, of course, we have the Cousin Sal special. We know about how the Steelers, they tend to start off games and they tend to lose these first halves. And if they can keep you around in the game long enough, they can find ways to steal it. So I don't necessarily like a side in this game. I think this is a low-scoring game. The total is 42, and if Pickens isn't playing, you're not getting that deep ball, and the Eagles' pass offense isn't rolling, and we know the Eagles have one of the highest run-pass splits in the NFL. I think you're seeing a lower-scoring game, and right now, as we're taping this, I'm in New York City right now. I just left Philadelphia. It's abysmal weather out here right now. And it's supposed to be abysmal weather for the weekend. So if it's raining, I think you see a low-scoring game. I make this total around 40, so I look to go under here.
I love that handicap, Dream, and it really supports the idea of getting on the Pittsburgh Steelers and grabbing all the points, because if you have a low total, then it's wonderful to have 5.5 points in your back pocket here. And I'll confess, as a known avowed Steeler backer, perhaps the most enthusiastic Steeler backer on the panel here, I'm completely blown away by this line. And I'm sitting and going through the resume for the Eagles and trying to find the best defense that this Eagles team has played. And I'm having a really hard time with it. Maybe it's the Ravens because the Ravens rush defense is so good. But seriously, look at who the Eagles have gone up against, especially on this 9-game win streak. You're not going to find any top 10 defenses there. And I believe that this Steelers defense is a different walk of life altogether. The defense now, with the health of Nick Herbig, the return of their backers, Alonzo Highsmith and Herbig are both back, and their pass rush has been capital D dominant. A 30% quick pressure rate, third straight game above the 30% threshold. You know who doesn't like pressure? Jalen Hurts. He hates it. He tries to get rid of the ball. He tries to move, and he's not very accurate under pressure. This defense is a radically different animal than anything that the Eagles have seen this season. Now, I have a ton of respect for the Eagles defense, and especially Pittsburgh missing George Pickens. It is concerning, but all of these points I think this defense is not being properly recognized. This Steelers defense. The other aspect to this game that we have to acknowledge, the Steelers are way better at special teams. They have the best kicker in football. The Eagles kicker can't make a 50-yarder. And if you're telling me that Mike Tomlin, who's won 4 straight games as a road dog, 9 of his last 11, the Steelers don't turn the football over, and they have the best kicker in football, and it's Mike Tomlin versus Nick Sirianni, okay, I'll take the points. I'm fine with that. It's just it's a Steelers play all the way for me.
I'm right there with you. I'm sick and tired of losing on the Steelers. That's number one. Tomlin is an underdog. The trends are absolutely outrageous. And you mentioned the weather, Raheem. I just did a little deep dive. 45, not a lot of wind, no precip. So not the extreme weather that we have today with all the rain in New York City and Philadelphia. And it's not going to be crazy bone-chilling cold. I don't really care. To House's point, I think Philadelphia has beaten up on a lot of bad teams this year. And I just think this is a rock'em sock'em game. You want to tell me the Eagles win a close game? Easily can see it. I can't see the Steelers getting blown out here. I can't see them losing by multiple scores. I'm all over this. I don't know if they're winning the game outright. I'm definitely grabbing the points. I'm with Pittsburgh here. Absolutely. Done fading.
Speaking of grabbing the points, I bet you guys $100 that Bill Simmons, when he does his 4-team teaser, he is going to tease the Pittsburgh Steelers 10 points.
Up.
15 and a half. 15. He's going to pop father. There we go.
No doubt about it.
So he can tease the Ravens down to 2.5 on the other side of it.
Ravens laying
16
points.
Whatever.
That game is not making our agenda today. The idea that they are laying 16 points is just absolutely outrageous on the road. But
hilarious.
It shows you
hilarious.
how humiliating and how pathetic the Giants are in 2024. Guys, we come back loaded. Rest of the card to get to. Green Bay laying points in Seattle. I have a feel on that game. My Dolphins getting points in Houston. Juicy game with the Colts and the Broncos. Really a lot of games to get to. We got you covered. Coming right back. All right, guys, let's get to the rest of the card. It's really, really good. I'm working backwards here, Raheem. Sunday Night Football. And we had a video that was posted on the Twitter and the Instagram and all the social media feeds from our Monday show with my guy, Raheem, all over the long shot possibilities for the Seattle Seahawks, who, yes, cost me money, and yes, absolutely wiped the floor with Kyler Murray and the Arizona Cardinals last Sunday. Raheem, I'm going right back to the well here. I love Green Bay in this game. I don't like Green Bay. I love Green Bay in this spot. They're getting extra rest. They're more physical. And the home field advantage that we've seen from Seattle in years past, it's not the same home field advantage, that 12th man. It's good. Don't get me wrong. It's still a tremendous place to play. I just think Green Bay, after what happened on Thursday night, licking their wounds, I'll trust LaFleur a little bit more than McDonald. I like McDonald a lot. But to me, better team, more physicality. I'm on the more well-rounded Green Bay Packers. I'm laying 2.5 on the road, and I think you're going to be against me here.
Yeah, I think I'm going to get you.
I thought so.
And I just think the big reason why is because I think the Seattle defense is just absolutely for real. And since they're week 10 bye, they're top 5 in defensive EPA per play and success rate. And I think that makes it tough for this Packers team, who is very boom or bust. If you're boom or bust and you're playing one of the best defenses in the league, I just don't know how you get past that. So I can't get to this number at all. So I'm probably looking to back Seattle. I haven't grabbed it yet, but I mean that's where my sights are set.
Yeah, I'm on the same side as Dream, JJ, and it's because I've become a believer in this Seahawks defense. What we've seen in terms of the numbers that they're posting now on a weekly basis, and you have to believe two things about the Seattle defense: that the version that we saw earlier in the season when they were decimated by injury was, a work in progress, and also that it was a work in progress because Mike Macdonald's defensive scheme, is complicated and it takes some time to get it. But since that week 10 bye, the disruption rate that they have, and what that is getting to the quarterback quickly and not letting teams set up and run the plays that they want. They're number 1 in pass EPA allowed and top 5 disruption rate. And they have a run D that's top 5 in success rate and EPA per rush. And that's the version of this defense that you have to believe in if you believe that they're going to be capable of going against this Packers team and holding their own. Offensively, inconsistency 100% due to the weakness of the offensive line. but they had the return of Abe Lucas. And the biggest issue with the Seahawks line is pass blocking, but the Packers are not a big time pass rush kind of team. Only 26th in pass rush win rate, 22nd in pressure rate. So Geno in a clean pocket, 9 touchdowns to 2 interceptions from a clean pocket, only 5 touchdowns, 10 picks under pressure. If the Packers can't get home, then I like Geno with his guys, JSN and Metcalf getting down the field against this vulnerable Packer secondary.
You guys in on the Seahawks, no surprise there. I'm telling you, Packers more well-rounded. You're going to see. This is a statement game for the Packers. I expect a monstrous, monstrous effort. So it's been a united front so far. We got a little disagreement for Packer-Seahawks Sunday night. Now, House, monstrous game for my Dolphins. They survived the Jets. They win in overtime. Now they go to Houston. Houston, I was doing a little homework and research today. They're unbelievable in the first half. They're god-awful in the second half. I couldn't believe how eye-opening those first half, second half trends were for the Houston Texans, who are coming off a bye. They're in very good shape to go win the AFC South from a desperation sense. This game, that doesn't always work, by the way. The desperate team doesn't always win. I want to throw that out there. But Miami clearly needs the game a lot more. They're a totally different team with Tua at quarterback. We all know that. The line has kind of fluctuated. They've been 2.5s. They've been 3s. It's back to 2.5. I'm going to defer on this. I don't have a great feel on this game. Dolphins getting the points against the Texans. What do we think?
I'm in the same boat as you. I don't really have a great feel for it because we know we can't really trust the Texans. But I don't like what we saw out of the Dolphins secondary last week against the Jets. I mean, Aaron Rodgers picked that secondary apart, and you know the receiving core for Houston is just formidable. So I don't really want to mess with Assad. I'm looking at the total. I see 46.5. And if you just look at the way that the Dolphins play on the road, they're 5-1 to the under on road games. And the Texans, for whatever weird reason, are under at home, 4-1-1 to the under at home. Houston, 5-2-1 to the under outside the AFC South. Miami 5-3 to the under. There's a bunch of under trends that track along here. And to your point, JJ, for whatever reason, the Texans don't score in the second half. So I might do a tiny play. I think the number is around 0.5 point. If I have to lay 0.5 point for the Texans to win the first half, I might play that because they are, I think, a top 5 team in terms of scoring offense. I think they average around 14 points, top 5 in terms of scoring in the first half, and then just leave them alone. Let that be the bet if I have to do a side, but for sure get something down on the under here.
I like the Texans, and just one thing that we know about the Miami Dolphins is they beat bad teams and they lose to good teams. And the question is this Texans team good?
That's the question, Raheem. Excellent point.
Please tell us.
The record at 8-5 would say they're a good team. A lot of the underlying numbers would maybe dispute that. Is that reasonable?
It's very reasonable. The biggest thing for me is I don't trust this Miami Dolphins defense. And House spoke about it earlier, but Aaron Rodgers had his first 300-yard game of the season. 27 of 39, 339 yards, 1 touchdown. And the only reason why they lost that game is because the Jets were 2 of 5 in the red zone. So while we talk all this, like myself and Anthony DeBundo, we've been saying it all year. This Texans team is pretty bad, and we don't trust them in terms of their early down success rate metrics. But when I look at them comparatively speaking, and when you're speaking of them versus the Miami Dolphins, they're the better team. They're second in defensive DVOA, and they're elite against the run and pass. And they lead the NFL in pass rush win rate. So if you consider all of those metrics and you look at the fact that Tua, he tends to struggle with pressure, and we know that Miami Dolphins secondary is going to have a hard time with Nico Collins and Tank Dell, I think this is a matchup where the Texans, off of a bye, they should be able to dominate. And JJ, you remember this. Miami Dolphins were dominant a couple years ago. They go into San Francisco and San Francisco shut them down. Who was the defensive coordinator of that team?
DeMeco Ryans.
Now you got DeMeco Ryans off of a bye with multiple weeks to prepare for a lesser version of this Dolphins offense with the same players.
I'm going to tell you 2 keys to watching this game. Teron Armstead, monitor his availability. Miami has to run the ball. They haven't run the ball very well over the last few weeks. They need him to do that. The other guy is Bradley Chubb, who looks like he's gearing up to a return. Dolphins have not gotten after the quarterback. I think they're 29th to 30th in sacks. These are factors that have me completely off this game. But I understand Raheem's point. Texans off a bye. Texans, DeMeco Ryans, defensive mind. And, Miami, hey, we know the deal. Until you beat a good team, it's open to interpretation. My counter, 2 are very good in the domes. You're not putting this game in 35-degree weather. You put it inside, which I think gives them a leg up. But stay away from me. Not going near the game. Anyway, this is a game I am going to go near, Raheem. Indianapolis and Denver. Indianapolis getting the points. Indianapolis is coming off a bye. Denver is coming off a bye. That Denver defense got whooped by Jameis Winston 2 weeks ago. Absolutely whooped. I don't think they're as good statistically as the numbers would tell you. I think they've played a very soft schedule. And look, I'm not exactly the leader of the Anthony Richardson fan club. I'm not a believer. I wouldn't want him to be my quarterback long term. But I'm going to look at this game. I'm going to see points. I think this is a tight 3-point game that can go either way. I take Andy with the points. I feel good about this. I think this is a close game. Where do we stand on Colts Broncos?
Yeah, JJ, I'm very suspicious of this game. This game feels like a rat to me. I don't understand the 4 points. 3, fine. 2.5, no problem whatsoever. Why is this line 4? What is that based on? We're going to have to ask Raheem about what his market perception is. But my inclination, if I had to play this, would just be to play the Denver money line. Now, this is a playoff game for the Colts. Let there be no doubt. If the Colts don't win this game, they are out. They have no chance at making the playoffs in the AFC. And coming off the bye, Shane Steichen, maybe don't have him all the way up in that Sean Payton class yet, but, he's shown a lot of inventive approaches, and we've seen a different Anthony Richardson since his benching, and that's what it was. It was a benching. There has been, play call-wise, some of taking advantage of the explosive capacity of that team, and we know that Denver's defense is susceptible to explosive plays because Jameis exploded all over him. Now, Anthony Richardson's not Jameis.
No, he's not.
And it is the case that, we haven't really seen the Colts establish a dominant run game. And that's the thing that I think would set up Anthony Richardson for some success. But I do understand your skepticism around the Denver defensive numbers because they, to their credit, beat up a bunch of bad teams. The 4 feels too high. I'm just suspicious, Dream. I don't know what to do here.
Yeah, I find this game very tough as well. And I think a big reason why is because Denver, they have a solid defense, and we know that they can slow down the run. I think they're 5th in defensive EPA per play, which means that they can't really rely on Jonathan Taylor as much. And we know that the Denver Broncos, with Levi Wallace out there, and I don't know if he's going to be playing as many snaps as he played against the Cleveland Browns, but if he's out there, the Colts can create some explosive plays. But I also think the Broncos could find some success on offense as well. So the number just feels like the right number at 4. And I don't know if I really want to get involved with this one. This is a must-win game for the Indianapolis Colts. I'm not buying it. The Broncos are really that good. But, the Colts are just – they're a tough team to back, to be honest with you, because Anthony Richardson, from just a down perspective, he's not that consistent. So I think I probably want to stay away from this one right now.
It's a juicy card. When we come back, best bets, week 15. Is House going straight up? Is he going to give us some sort of tease? Last week, the Fade the Achilles boys ended up being rather profitable. I tailed them on that. It was a layup with the team from Minnesota. It was a sweat job with the team going against Aaron Rodgers, but we don't apologize. Win is a win, cover is a cover. Best bets, week 15. East Coast Bias coming up next. Week 15, House best bets. Job well done with Minnesota and Miami last week. How are we going to handicap this particular Sunday?
There is on this card an absolutely magnificent teaser opportunity. I am grabbing the 2.5 that Seattle is getting from the Green Bay Packers, jacking that up to 8.5 and putting that alongside the Dallas Cowboys, who for some bananas reason are underdogs, 2.5-point underdogs to the Carolina Panthers. What? So Dallas up to 8.5, Seattle up to 8.5. I will also tell you, I'm playing it as a 2-leg parlay. Both of those underdogs on the money line combined plus 424. We already talked about why I like Seattle, and Seattle at 8.5 is delicious. This Dallas thing is bananas. Dallas was one special teams play away from beating Cincinnati on Monday night. What would the line be here if they had won that game? I mean, probably even, or maybe them favored by a point or so. Why are we in a world where all of a sudden Carolina is a 2.5-point? Carolina, to its credit, now has an average offense, but still a bottom 5 defense. I'm on the Dallas as a dog, and I'm happy with the Seattle side as well.
Raheem.
I'm going to lay the 7 with House's Washington Commanders. I mean, look, they're taking on the Saints. And the biggest thing is Derek Carr got hurt last week. And without Derek Carr, they're one of the worst teams in the NFL. I mean, you saw the games with Spencer Rattler. With Spencer Rattler out there, they lost games by 24, 23, and 18 points. And in those games with Spencer Rattler, they at least had weapons. They at least had Rashid Shaheed. They at least had Chris Olave. They don't have any of those guys now. So if you ask me, what we saw last week with the New Orleans Saints and the New York Giants, those are two evenly matched teams when you take Derek Carr out of the mix. And now you put them up against a Washington Commanders team where Jayden Daniels is healthier. And I think a lot of his struggles in the middle of the season had to do with his health. Well, he's healthier. They should be able to run the ball with Brian Robinson. I think they're going to beat this team by 14, 17, 21 points. I think you could bet this team on an adjusted total. You could sell points. But for the sake of this, bet, I'm just going to lay the 7.5 with the Commanders. I really like this one.
Throwing a disclaimer on this one because Justin Herbert needs to play. Assuming Justin Herbert is playing, I love the Chargers laying a 3 against the Buccaneers. I think it's a good spot for them. The physicality that they'll provide on both sides of the ball, I think will be too much for my guy Baker Mayfield to handle. I love me Baker Mayfield. He's been good to me all year. But in this case, I think it's a good bounce-back spot for the Los Angeles Chargers. But monitor that Justin Herbert injury because if it's Taylor Heineke, changes the handicap just a little bit. So I'm going to be on that. And I'm also going to be on the Green Bay Packers laying the 2.5, which I know is not music to my guy House and Raheem's ears. Okay, that's going to do it for East Coast Bias. We're back Sunday, 11 a.m. Eastern. Ringer Sunday pregame, FanDuel TV, YouTube TV. For House, Raheem, JJ. We out. Be good, everybody.